Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Christine Marie Cocchiola. Dr. Cocchiola presents internationally on the dynamics of coercive control, educating professionals, advocates, and protective parents about children's lived experiences and the most effective intervention strategies for victims of abuse. She is a therapeutic parenting and divorce custody coach, a social justice advocate since age 19. She developed the Protective Parenting Program, an evidence based, attachment focused therapeutic model designed for parents whose children have been harmed by abusive partners. As both a survivor and protective parent, Dr. Cocciola brings personal insight to her professional work. She is the author of the children's book, Every Moment of Every Day, and co-author of Framed: Women in the Family Court Underworld. Her TEDx talk with over 1.5 million views, It Is All Coercive Control, is available on YouTube. So, Christine, welcome so much. I'm so
Thank
happy to have you here.
thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to meet you finally and to have a conversation.
Yes, love the TED Talk. I was just telling her that I just watched it, and it just put words to what I can't always say about coercive control, how it's so hard for us to just really talk about what is it, like those kinds of things, like getting the words out there and people are like, that doesn't sound so bad. But when it's that small drip every day, you don't realize what's going on. You don't realize the example you gave. You guys will have to go watch it. I'll link it in the show notes. The what you said about like the carpenter ants, like when the carpenter ants are eating your home, do you say to the people, why didn't you just leave? And
Right.
it's those little things that we've talked about. And then
Mhm.
so tell me how you got into doing this kind of work.
Yeah, so at the age of 11, I found out that my mom had been abused, and I just remember thinking, how could such a horrible problem even exist in the world? My original work was I became an advocate at the age of 19 as soon as I could.
Wow.
And I've been doing this work for over 4 decades. I just didn't know that my partner in life, my boyfriend, when I was 16, was actually an abuser. So that's, I think, the interesting part of my story is there's a lot of
Yeah.
people who come to this work after being in a relationship dynamic. I've been doing it my whole life. I educate on the topic. I'm a college professor
Hmm.
teaching on domestic abuse every single semester to my college social work students. I'm a therapist. I help people leave abusive relationships. I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with mine. And so I called it psychological abuse. I said, wow, but we didn't really talk about this like in the, early 2000s. We weren't talking
No.
about gaslighting and manipulation the way we are now, which is so great we are, but I
Hmm.
knew something was off. I just couldn't figure out what it was. And then when I did, you know what it's like. You're not supposed to
Hmm.
let the abuser know that you're on to them
Yeah.
because if you do, it's more dangerous. That's when the post-separation abuse really accelerated everything.
Right.
And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, he's been weaponizing my children all along. Oh my gosh, he's been
Hmm.
financially abusing me all along. Oh my gosh, these psychological tactics, the intermittent reinforcement. It's like,
Right.
this is a playbook. Wow, it happened to me.
And
So,
I always say like that's the good part that it's a playbook because we now have the playbook and we know what's going to happen. When I'm talking to women, I'm always like, okay, this is what's going to happen next, or this, that, and the other. We can really tell them what's going to happen, what they're doing. I don't know how they're all the same. Like the brain is
mhm,
so fascinating to me. Like how are they all the same, doing every single thing? This playbook, it's bizarre to me, but anyway, the brain is fascinating to me. So how
mhm.
long were you with your partner? Well, I guess first, how long were you with your boyfriend when you were 16?
So that was the abuser, and I
Oh,
dated him 7 years, and I was
okay.
married to him 27 years and 11 months.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
lost everything. I lost the house. I lost assets. I walked away from everything because that was the only way to disentangle myself and
Yeah.
disentangle the children. Yeah.
Right.
I didn't
Exactly.
have to fight for custody because my kids were 17 and 19,
Okay.
but he had been actively, I figured
Mhm.
out, alienating me from my kids for a long time. I didn't know what the problem was. I'm like, gosh, I must be a bad mother. There must be something wrong with me. And the reality is that he had been saying horrible things about me all along. So
Yeah.
that's why my primary focus when you introduced me is like, how do we help kids in these family systems
Yes.
heal? when we have limited time with them or when they're so aligned with the oppressor, how do
Yeah.
we actually help them heal? Because that became my life's work when I figured
Yeah.
out what was happening to them.
Yeah. And I didn't have to co-parent, but I resonate with the fact that when I left my marriage, my two oldest told me they were proud of me for leaving. Our oldest was 29 at the time. So I understand that part, of that, I didn't have to really co-parent, but I had to repair my relationship
Mhm.
because he was doing the same thing behind the scenes. It was very similar to my childhood. Mom is crazy. Something's wrong with her. And then he was, of course, like the circus parent, always like a good time and everything's great. And I was the disciplinarian and mom's a problem. I had to really untangle that with my kids, and I had to have apologies with them. They apologized to me, thank God, for what they participated in once we started to understand and heal. But I also apologized for the reactive rage I had. I was a yelly, screamy, abusive mom, because I was not supported and I was actively being manipulated and hurt. And so
Oh,
I didn't know. Go ahead.
oh, I have to interject. I have to. I want you to reframe that. I'm a
Okay.
therapist, you know that. So,
Okay. Tell me.
okay. So I actually, if I had my druthers, I would get rid of the word reactive abuse
Okay.
because when you are trapped in the
Yeah.
den with a wolf,
Yeah.
at some point you're going to fight back.
Right.
And that's called self-defense in the criminal court system.
Mm-hmm. Of
And so you would never behave that way in a million years. And I'm not trying to minimize your repair work with your children because your
course.
children, we do behave differently. We are being harmed actively.
Right.
They're being harmed. We don't even know they're being harmed sometimes, right? We
Right.
don't even
Uh-huh.
know what's going on. And we behave out of character. So we repair the fact that we behaved out of character. But I would love if you said that in my self-defense, when I was trapped, sometimes I behaved out of character, and I'm really sorry for that behavior. I wish it never happened. But but I
Yeah.
don't, when we call it reactive abuse, it almost
I
sounds like
know.
we're abusers, and we're not.
I
That's not who
know.
you are. Characteristically, that's not
Yeah.
who you are. So it makes me
Yeah.
tear up a little bit just thinking about
Me
that.
too. Me too. I accept it. Thank you for the therapy. I love it. No, because that's dang it.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful for that because that's not who I am, because the minute I left my marriage, I'm not an angry person. I'm sure not an angry grandma. I'm like the sweetest grandma. My kids are like, "Well, that must be nice to be that kind of grandma." It's like, "Sorry guys, but we've had a lot of time to repair
Yeah.
and heal with each other and love each other
Mhm.
outside of that. So, okay,
Mhm.
well,
I just I want
I
to put the
appreciate it.
blame where it belongs. And we
Okay.
can apologize for behaving out of character, but that's again not who you are.
Okay,
So
yeah. All
yeah,
right, well, thank you.
he wouldn't have chosen you if you weren't this
Yes.
kind, loving person.
Ex-
That's my podcast is Perfect Prey. He wouldn't have chosen you because they choose their perfect prey. They choose who they
Yes.
can prey upon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Um, okay, yeah. No, you're right. It's so true. And that's the thing. That's the hard part, right? It's like all these things, the doing the everything quote unquote right. I'm Gen X, and just like if you were a good girl and did all the right things, and I grew up in that kind of a household, you just be a good girl, get good grades, do all the right
Hmm.
things, and then you're gonna
Hmm.
get this life, right? But then
Yeah.
I got the same life that I did, that I had growing up, which was not physically abusive, but there were things going on there. When I look back, going, I married my dad. I ended up in the same environment, emotionally neglectful and those kinds, that's just like the summary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to, for your listeners, I want to be like, I grew up in my parents, my mom passed away in December. They were married 64 years and the most loving couple on the planet.
Yeah.
But they never taught us the red flags. I only knew green flags
Yeah.
growing up. I knew how to forgive and be kind, and I didn't know any other way. And so it doesn't really, like, your family system doesn't necessarily make you find an abuser, right?
Right.
But what we do know is when you grow up with an abuser, you do have a greater likelihood of being in an abusive relationship and or being an abuser. And that's the scary part, isn't it? That
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
prevent children from growing, we can prevent children from taking on these traits if they actually can live in a safe space, if they can authentically be themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that's what I always wanted. And of course, I didn't have that either, where I didn't have a safe space, even, during my marriage. I never felt like myself. And I think that's why when I got divorced, I felt like somebody opened the gate and I was like a dog that just like ran for its life, that had been trapped because you can't, how it is. Like you can't be yourself when you're in abuse, when you're in coercive control, you can't be yourself. And so I'm always, when I'm trying to encourage other women, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like when. So what can parents do, or the what are we calling the protective parent? Is that what you're calling it?
That's what I call protective
Yeah,
parents. I just assume they're safe. We just assume, right?
right, exactly.
Mhm.
What kind of discussions are you having with the protective parents about what they can do when the kids aren't there or when the kids come home?
Yeah, so it's really about, there's quite a few things, but if we think about what's happening in our body when our children
Yeah,
are coming home and sometimes behaving in dysregulated states as a result of being coerced at that other person's home, they're
yeah,
coerced to maybe be mad at mom or dislike mom. We'll say
yeah,
mom in this case, right?
yeah,
And for anybody who's a guy who's listening, I have male clients, most of them gay.
right.
The reality is 94% of violence occurs by men. So if we
Yeah,
were having a conversation around breast cancer and wearing pink and running and saying that breast cancer happens to women, no one would be angry. But for some reason, people are angry when we talk about
yes,
it in this context.
it's true.
So it frustrates me.
Me
So
too.
anyway, yeah, no, just about really feeling your body and feeling getting your body ready for when that child comes home, because
Yeah,
they might come home and say things that are really, that feel harmful to you, that feel abusive to you.
yeah,
And we have to understand it's the child is actually just a mouthpiece for the abuser, being
right.
coerced to be this mouthpiece. I use it the analogy of a quiver, which is where your arrows are in the back.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so the abuser standing behind the child, handing them an arrow
Ugh,
and saying, go ahead and send it. And then the child has to send it or they're going to deal with the abuser, right? And so
right.
they're trapped. And so, how do we really look through that lens of understanding the torture they're experiencing and
Mm-hmm.
then say, well, they're saying this crap to me, but it's just the abuser and they're just words and they don't mean it. And so we
Right.
actually help our kids get disempowered. So instead of holding on to that quiver and getting ready to fight, we
Mm-hmm.
kind of let them let go. It's a co-regulation.
Amazing.
How do we help them truly understand that they could say whatever they want to us? We're going to still be standing here waiting for them. We love
Yes.
them implicitly.
Yeah.
They can be themselves. And sometimes I was on a call last night with a woman who is doing some really remarkable work in the field, and she was forced into repair therapy with her abusive father. And for 2 years, the therapist allowed her to sit silently, and she sat silent. But what she said is that sometimes being angry with her mother
Mm-hmm.
felt safer because being nice with her mother felt like betrayal of the abuser.
Wow.
And the fear we have when our children have such a fear to betray the abuser. Yeah.
Yeah, and I so see that. I'm just thinking about friends that I have that are going through this with young kids, and I don't know how to help them. So I'm very happy to send them, your book and let them hear this so that they can have the tools so that they can understand that there is that thing I mean, I did it as a wife, I did it. I had to side with him,
Hmm.
do those things, oh no, everything's fine, because you don't want to cross them in any way. I wasn't in physical danger, but I um, sure didn't want to be alive at the end,
No,
so
right. And you wish that he had hit you, I'm sure, as
I
we all
just,
say. If he would
what,
just hit us, then everybody would know it was really
then
abuse.
everybody would know, right? And even the like betrayal and lies, things, just like the secondary gaslighting you get. Then are you sure that happened? Did you ever catch him doing things? It's like, I don't know. I don't have time for that kind of stuff anymore. It's like, I need you. Here's the door. Please leave. Like
Hmm.
we don't talk that way. But I would love to talk about, can you give us some examples and some information about coercive control that if people don't completely understand what that looks like?
Yeah, this is so important because there's a lot of misinformation out there. People are calling coercive control hidden abuse. They're calling it psychological abuse. That's not accurate. It's
Okay.
the underpinning of abuse. Abusers use psychological tactics. And by the
Mm-hmm.
way, some of those psychological tactics feel good. Did you know love bombing is part of the
Hmm.
criminalization of coercive control in the UK? So love
Wow.
bombing feels good. When somebody promises to take you on a trip or that you're going to go, you're going to get married in 6 months, or we're going to have a beautiful family together. That's all future faking. These are,
Right.
the abuser doesn't show up with a sign, as I say in my TEDx saying, I'm an abuser. They show
Right.
up in ways that feel good. And that
Yeah.
lures us in. It's a grooming process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the psychological tactics can feel good and then they can feel bad. But we
Yeah.
don't know they're bad because there's been so much good that we gaslight ourselves, what you were
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of referring to,
Right.
right? We
Yeah.
don't want to believe it. So it's psychological tactics, good and bad. It's certainly financial abuse, 99%. I mean, I think we could just say 100% of these cases suffer financial abuse. And a lot of people think that means I have to be on a budget or I have to show my abuser all my receipts, or it
Hmm.
also can mean you're the workhorse. You're
Right.
contributing more to the
Yeah.
family income than the other person, and they continue to give less, right? It's not equal. And
Right.
and I always say that's like for me one of the biggest telltale signs of abuse is when the relationship is set on unequal dynamics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a double standard everywhere
Yes.
in the parental subsystem or in the partnership subsystem. So, and then there's legal abuse, and of course the weaponization of children. And I mean, I say this
Hmm.
and people think I'm dramatic. I'm like, it started day one. The moment that we hold that baby in our arms,
Uh-huh.
so abusers are born with certain traits, as you know, but those traits get fortified in unhealthy attachment during their development. They
Hmm.
don't feel like they can be themselves, they're shamed.
Right.
And so the moment that that baby is born, there is, I believe, a true acknowledgement that they cannot love like we love. They don't have the
Mm.
capacity. They see the love we have for that baby,
Yeah.
and they are like so shamed by the fact that they can't do that. That there is a threat, the baby becomes a threat because the baby's taking away attention from them.
Okay. I was wondering.
Or
Yeah.
or B, and this happened in my case, the baby wasn't perceived as a threat. I now became second class citizen. As soon as I had my children, I went from queen to
Oh,
dirt bag. And it wasn't even like always dirt bag, but the point was I was second class citizen in my home. I wasn't as important. And you could imagine as a young mother
yeah.
when you're like, but he won't go on a date with me, or how come he doesn't spend time with me? And all my friends would be like, but he gives the kids baths and he's playing on the floor with them and
Right.
he's so much fun. And what they didn't know is he never got up in the middle of the night. He never took care of the
Right.
laundry. Like they didn't know that, but he performed in a way that it seemed like he was this miraculous father, that how could I even complain? How
Right.
could I even complain? And so this is what happens is that they figure out, I think, day one, what matters more to you than anything on the planet.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And they will weaponize it. They will
Yeah.
weaponize it. And they do a good job of doing it slowly over time. It's mockery, it's just slight diminishing. Oh, mom's always tired.
Yes.
When I left my ex, and then there was an incident between him and my daughter, and I said to her, when did this start? She said, oh, when I was 9. She was 17 at the time. She remembers the
Whoa.
day and the hour The
Wow.
exact hour I had left for the weekend because I caught him cheating with a good friend, of
No.
course.
Jeez.
And I left for the weekend with the kids, and he did the whole, I love you, come back to me.
Hmm.
You're my soulmate. And if you don't come back, I'm calling the police, you're kidnapping the children. It was like I was at my parents' house, like, and I was petrified, as we all are.
Yes.
And I went back and he said we get therapy. And then when I left to go to work that night, he told them that I was unstable, that I had cheated on him, that I was off my medication and they shouldn't trust me. And it started then. Now, I think it started before then, but it intensified. He knew I was onto him, right? He knew I
Yes,
had called him.
exactly. Yes. And that was the thing when we got divorced, I didn't know what narcissistic abuse was. I didn't know what anything was because I'm Gen X. And if you weren't being hit, you weren't in abuse. So I didn't know any of this stuff. And so until 3 months later, I think the algorithm started showing me things because I had said the word gaslighting. And I even told him, I said, I think you're gaslighting me. And he gaslit me into believing he was not. So I was like, okay. But then the algorithm started showing me things, and I found out about the betrayals, and I started unraveling all the lies. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense to me. And that is when I started to wake up. And then when I learned about the smear campaign, I was like, oh, I think he's been doing that for a long time because how else? I don't know if this happened to you, but when you leave abuse, you know how your brain starts to heal and like instinctively you just know things. Like, how are we knowing these things? Like, I was like, these are the most, like, I had so much clarity. I had the most amazing thoughts. And I'm like, how would I know that? How would that, just come? I almost had like an instinct of some sort, an intuition almost. And so I had said to the kids because they were grown and we were having discussions, and I said, I think your dad has been talking bad about me. And they go, oh yeah, this is what he says, that you gave up on the marriage. I'm like, oh my Lord, I was the one in therapy. I was the one all the years I had piles and piles of self-help books and therapy and everything else, and all the years of going to marriage counseling that, of course, we weren't supposed to be doing since we were in abuse. That is not
Yes.
recommended. And in your TEDx, you did talk about how that they can often gaslight the therapist. And that happened to me for sure
Mhm.
on the last one. And so that to me, while it hurt to hear the smear campaign, I was really, every time I heard something, some new bit of information, it just validated what I had been going
Mhm.
through. And I said, I'm not crazy. Okay. I'm not crazy. Because you know how insane they drive you with the gaslighting and the manipulation. I felt completely crazy for years. We were together since we were, it was 33 years that we were together. So we
Wow.
met when we were 18 and 19. We weren't together then, but we met when we were babies without brains. So it's hard. You
Yeah.
know how it is.
Yeah, 35 years. I guess I have you beat by a couple of years.
And you were young too. And that's the thing is like formative brain development time.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, as we know, victims and survivors tend to be highly agreeable and
Yeah.
conscientious, and we work hard. You have all those self-help books, you're going to marriage
Yeah.
and family therapy. And the problem is, and I do train professionals, therapists and attorneys and court professionals and advocates and coaches,
Yeah.
because there is a line where when somebody comes in to see you, and you should be able to assess if there's a power dynamic going on here that's
Yes.
inappropriate. And that should be the first thing you assess. If you have two people in your office coming in for marriage therapy and one
Yeah.
person has a lot of anxiety and they're distressed,
Hmm.
we have to ask them, as therapists, we have to ask the question, is there a power dynamic differential here that needs to be addressed? Because if there is, you don't belong in marriage therapy, you need individual, and I don't know what you're going to get because you're not going to get
Right.
better.
Right, exactly. So let me, I'm thinking back to, so I just want to ask you, I want to pick your brain about that because thinking back to, and I've talked to a lot of women who didn't really know that they were in some sort of narcissistic abuse. Okay, they didn't know because they weren't being hit. So I think back to that. What would a therapist have asked me, and would I have even known? Do you feel like there's a power dynamic? I don't know. I don't know if I, what would I have even said? Because I don't even know if I would have known.
Well, let me ask you a few questions,
Okay.
okay? And these would be like assessment questions. Does he ever call you names?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. And have you ever gone out somewhere and you've wondered how he knows where you are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you ever really felt something strongly, like to your core, that happened and he's convinced you that it didn't happen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And does he lie?
Well, um, he says he's not lying,
Right. But
but
it,
I'm thinking it's a lie.
right. Okay. So do you feel like he lies to you sometimes, maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. And does he like to joke around and maybe poke fun at you? And when you tell him it bothers you, he still does it?
Yes.
Oh, mockery. Okay. The lowest form of humor.
Right.
Okay. So for me, it's like Claire. It's just Claire.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
like that's a power differential. That's someone trying to dominate you
Right.
and diminish you in a
Wow.
partnership, diminish you in a relationship. Now the question becomes, if we disclose this to him, so my first question to you would be, how do you feel about disclosing this to him, that you have these feelings? And if you say, oh, no, 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 I don't want to disclose that to him,
Mhm.
I know immediately
Yeah.
that he's not going to change, that you've already tried to do this, that you've already like, maybe shown himself like,
Yeah.
and if you say, yeah, maybe, and I talk to him and he says, you know what? I think I do that.
Hmm.
You're right. Oh, I did cheat on her. You're right. Like all of those things, then maybe there's help. People get mad at me when I say that, and some people call me hyperbolic, a little dramatic. They're like, not all abusers, won't change. I'm like, okay, virtually
Yes,
all who
exactly.
have these personality traits are immovable. And the
Right.
moment that you tell a victim there's a little hope, she's going to hold on to that, and that's a huge problem.
Well, and that's why I stayed for so many years
Exactly.
because I lived off of hope and breadcrumbs. I say that all the time. That's how I stayed for so long. And also as it got towards the end, the last few years of our marriage, he was ramping up this relationship. Other women was always an issue, of course, but it was a coworker who he's now married to. And it was always like there's something going on. I know there's something going on, but I couldn't look directly at it because then my marriage would have fallen apart, which it
That's
was
right.
already falling apart and it was probably already fallen apart anyway.
Exactly.
So that I just held on for so long to hope. And I didn't want to turn this into a therapy session, but I think it's important to have talked
It's
about that because
important.
I think that was very eye-opening because I think those questions I answered truthfully, like I would have felt at that time. Um, because no, I wouldn't have said, no, 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 you don't tell him because I would have wished you would tell him. Please get out your PowerPoint so that you can try to explain it to him. But you know how it is. I think it would. Often left the therapy office and he started back up in the car.
Well,
Like
sure.
I got screamed at in the car for bringing something up. You embarrassed me. I can't believe you even thought that way, things like that. So we wouldn't have even made it five
That's right.
seconds,
That's right.
So yeah, so
Right.
bring it up or don't bring it up. I wasn't in physical danger, so I didn't like bringing things up, but I wasn't scared he was going to hurt me that way.
Right. Right. And I mean, I could go on. Did he block leeway from a room? Did he make you stay in circular fights for a long period of
Oh
time,
God,
right? I mean,
please. Yes. Yeah.
if you shared a vulnerability, which we all share vulnerabilities over 33 years with our
Yeah.
partners, did he bring those up in arguments? Like those,
Yes. And hold him against me. Yes.
100%. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. My ex used to say the kids will never go with you if you leave me. And my kids did have contempt for me because he had turned them against me, but I
Right.
didn't know it until 8 years later.
Right.
So, there's a lot of reasons why victims stay. We know, victims go back numerous times. We know the greatest risk for a victim, as anybody who's listening,
Yeah.
is when you do leave. That's
Right.
when you're at the greatest risk.
Mm-hmm.
So, we tell people to leave, but I'm here to say there's no judgment if you stay. If you came into my office and you said, yes to all of these things, I'd say, okay, so what are we going to do? Am I going to help you
Right.
stay for now until you're ready? Or do you want me to help you escape? Because there is no judgment. People stay for a variety
Yeah.
of reasons, and sometimes they have to stay. They feel there's no other choice, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I did that for months and I'd show up again at therapy and say, like, I didn't leave this month, I'm going to try again. I had a place to go, but the only reason I was going to leave was to send a message, that something was wrong and he really needed to. It was like the final straw kind of thing. And then we did therapy one more time, marriage counseling, which was, I don't know, I just one last ditch effort. And the marriage counselor said that he was very handsome, and what did I have to complain about? And I was done after that.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
didn't
like
even.
the therapist who said, all men watch porn. Okay.
Yes, so helpful. And so I just want I after that I was like, and I threw a huge fit like a toddler, right? I was having that that reaction, right? And I taught, and she said I should go on meds and all these things. And I don't know how she's practicing. Anyway, so I talked to my therapist after, and she said, "No, you're good." And she didn't like say things, but she was like, "No, you're not her patient. You're my patient. You're good."
I'm so glad you found a good therapist.
Yes, I was so thankful. She was very helpful in everything and just kind of figuring it all out and unraveling it all and helping me heal. So it was great that way. It's just it's stressful to think about when you're working up with the parents and trying to heal from that, or how you can build the relationship with the protective parent if the other parent is manipulating the situation. um I don't know
Yeah,
if there's what else you would like to tell us about that you think would
sure.
be helpful.
Sure. So the most important thing is your child's attachment to you, and
Mm,
it should be secure. And when a child is growing up in this kind of family system, they know that, I mean, they don't know this, but the attachment to the abusive parent is unstable because the only way the abusive parent loves them is if they do what the abusive parent wants. So it's
okay.
conditional.
Right.
And so it's really, really important for protective parents to kind of rise up a little bit and recognize again the behaviors are not personal,
Mm-hmm.
and to do what they can to create as much ability for a child to be their authentic selves
Mm,
when they're with that protective parent. When I can relax, and sometimes that means screaming and yelling, but when I can
yeah.
relax with you and be myself and let out my frustration with you out to you without you taking it personal, without you being angry with me. You don't have to accept like outrageous behavior,
Right.
but you get to just be accepting of this behavior and understand where it's coming from. The more that I will feel a secure attachment to you.
Mm-hmm.
And every child needs, or virtually every child needs, secure attachment.
Yeah.
So it's safety. It's feeling physically safe, psychologically safe. It's knowing that I can push the boundaries a little bit, and you're going to maybe push back, but you're not going to hold it against me, right? It's like,
Right. Right.
a bad incident happens, there's a yelling and a screaming match, and then you're not angry when you put dinner on the table. You let it go. You show your
Yeah.
child that
Yeah.
you are able to let go, that you are able to move on, that
Mm-hmm.
you are able to repair, right? How important
Yeah.
is that repair? And that repair doesn't mean you confront the issue right then, because your kid may not be able to handle it right now. I think it's
Right.
really important. Protective parents don't realize that when a child grows up in a family system like that, they are being betrayed by the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
abuser is a betrayer, but
Right.
they're also often being told the protective parent is a betrayer. Your
Right.
protective parent doesn't love you, or they wish you went to this school, or they like your brother more than you, or they wish they tell me all the time how much a problem you are. Or they tell your
Mm-hmm.
parent, your grandma and grandpa, that you don't really love them. Like, there are so many ways that they're betraying the
Yeah.
healthy relationship. I call it malicious fracturing of attachment. They are
Right.
maliciously fracturing the attachment
Mm-hmm.
between the protective parent and the child, and in that they can better control the child. That gives
Right.
them carte blanche. So that's why we are constantly working on repair. And repair comes with simple, simple little things: positive memories,
Yep.
laughing,
Mm-hmm.
singing, music. It's why I wrote for little ones. It's like
Yeah.
they come home dysregulated, and then it's like mom says, we can run around outside, or even make a big pillow tent and hide, or turn on some music and dance. Mom tells me, you get to choose our plans.
I
You
love
get to
that.
choose them. And so how do we let children come home, and we're not like waiting? How did it go? Did you have a good visit? No, we
Ye-
just let them come
yes.
home
Yes.
and we watch them and we attune to what they need. And maybe they
Hmm.
need a few slices of apple while they're sitting on a chair on their technology right now.
Right.
Um, these kiddos are remember, the abuser is actively coercing them and
Yeah.
controlling them at that other home. They
Yes.
are suffering the same pain you and I suffered,
Hmm.
except that nobody can see it. Nobody sees it as abuse.
Right.
And it's impacting their development, their feelings of safety.
It's so horrible. I'm just thinking about friends that are going through this, and something that they have told me, I don't know if you have any advice for this or any tips, is that the the other parent that they're going to the home, right? The parent is almost pitting the siblings against each other, and then when they come home, they have to like they're talking about that, saying, you know, dad did this and that kind of thing. And my friend just doesn't know what to do with that.
Yeah,
And it's so hard. She's, talking through it and saying, is that really um I don't know. They'll just talking through the whole thing so that they can get their information out to her and give them a safe place to talk about it.
right.
But what do you say, if anything, about that? Because not just fracturing the relationship with the protective parent,
100%.
yeah, but
Yeah.
with the sibling.
And with the extended family and with the soccer team. If the kid loves soccer, then they're
Yes.
going to fracture that attachment with the friends, with the school. I have a mom who has a 12-year-old who was going into seventh grade and has always been in the same school system, all the extracurricular
Uh-huh.
activities 20 minutes away from dad. Dad somehow convinced the court that the child needed to spend seventh and eighth grade and the rest of his high school years with dad 20 minutes away. The child left all of his relationship dynamics,
Oh,
and that's isolation, right? This
jeez.
is common. This is what
Yes.
abusers do. They're just trying to lure the child into another environment where they're
Mm.
actually able to further control them. And I know this father's goal, as many fathers or these perpetrators, goals are to fracture that attachment.
Yeah.
So what you're really talking about here is triangulation. I mean, abusers are
Yes.
constantly triangulating people within the family system. And what I always say is like there we have such an amazing skill set as protective parents because we love implicitly.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is just constantly be reigniting and fortifying healthy attachments. So
Hmm.
this is, I call them protective parts. For example, have grandma and grandpa over regularly because the
Hmm.
abuser is going to try to take grandma and grandpa away from that child.
Okay.
So have, Friday night dinners with grandma and grandpa, or
Hmm.
the friends and the family that you love have a pizza party. I would advise not to have any alcohol because you'll be called an alcoholic, or any weed or
Right.
anything. Like I
Right.
advise you just like, soda or water and just
Uh-huh.
have people over. The more that that child is exposed to the healthy protective parts in their life, the less
Yes.
likely the abuser can isolate them. This goes the same for siblings.
Mm.
So as protective parents, we have to, my children were
Yeah.
super close. And then one was considered the smart one, but
Mhm.
also the snobby one, the one who thought he was better than others. And the
Yeah.
other was quote unquote not as smart. And also, so like the splitting of the relationships,
Yeah.
right? And so I mean, I worked fastidiously when I started having regular time with them and they were older, but how do I help to reignite their attachment with each other? They're both different as a
Yeah.
result of the abuse they experienced. They're not the same kids they were before.
Right.
And so it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. And that's, I have a grief course just for this reason, because this
Yeah.
grief, this grief is so immense.
It
It's
is.
so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And is the grief course for children or for parents or
for parents,
okay.
for
Yeah.
protective parents, for
Yeah.
moms.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If it,
Yeah,
it
because I
is.
have
And
moms, as you can imagine, I have moms who they're forcing their children to go with an abusive parent they don't want
yes.
to go to. They're forcing
Yes.
them to go to therapy with the person they don't want to go to. Or I have moms who their children are totally conditioned against them
Yeah.
and they've never been abusive, right? Or I
Yes.
have moms who have no contact at all with their children, like for 3 years, 5 years. I have a mom, one of the last stories in Framed is Victoria. Her ex was on the Madison Reed website, like,
Oh,
and got
okay.
caught. And then, but her children were going regularly to his house, but he still called her an alienator. And he got full custody. They went to reunification camp, even though they were going to his house because
Wow.
he knew the people in the court system. He knew them
Yeah.
well. There's a whole big network. And
Mhm.
not that all court professionals are colluding, but unfortunately too many are. And then it's like not all men, but too many.
But too many, yes.
So, so, um, so we write she writes her story, we get it into the book, and then she contacts me a year later and says that her 16-year-old got in the car and drove to her house 3 hours away.
Oh my God.
First time she saw her child in 6 years. The court
Amazing.
system is just really messed up. It's not understanding the harms to these kiddos.
It's not. I mean, I've
It's
heard,
just,
I just some
yeah,
of the stories I've heard from women, just like the police being called and then the parent having to, or the child having to go through reunification
yeah.
for with the parent who the police was called on. It's like, oh my God. And it's so, to me, it's so frustrating. It's so,
Mhm.
I know you're doing this work every day and to me, it's very frustrating. It's very heartbreaking. And this is not like, eh, a silver lining, but I always look at it like you're ruining that parent is ruining their relationship with the children at some point when they wake up like that, when the child woke up and drove. I just
Yeah.
think about that. That's the only thing I can hope is the silver lining that one day they're going to wake up and they're going to see, the
Right.
abusive parent for who they really are.
But absolutely. And I love that. And I do try to give people hope. But the grief of all that was
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's the part that makes me cry all
Yeah.
the time is like the 3 years, the 6 years, the
Right.
child that you knew that was very secure
Right.
and loved life, now
Yeah.
depressed and on social media all the time or addicted to technology, right? All
Right.
because they've disassociated from the harm.
Right.
It's just a lot there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's even been something that I've been unraveling is the grief of not having softer years with my kids,
Ah,
being such a just yelling and screaming and I was actively told I was not a good mom,
yeah.
intentionally told I was a bad mom because of this X, Y, and Z. And I'd say, like, well, wait, but I do all these things. And he'd say, yeah, but you do this one thing poorly or whatever, whatever his words were. And I'd say, so you can't tell me I'm a good mom? He's like, no, because of this. And
Mhm.
then, and if I would have been better, then our kids wouldn't be whatever. And it was so hard. So I grieve those years that were not soft. Those I've had so much healing with my kids now, and I love our relationship and we can have a great time together. But man, I grieve those years of
Well,
being the mom.
the mothering that we all plan to be, the mother
Yeah.
that we plan to be, the mothering we thought we'd all get to do,
Yes.
right? It's robbed from you.
Yeah.
And people who don't know, people who haven't experienced this, who have no clue
Yeah.
about these relationship dynamics. I wish I could live through rose-colored glasses and like imagine the world isn't filled with evil people. The world is filled with evil
Right.
people.
Right.
And
Right.
and so there's just we call it disenfranchised grief because it's like if your child died,
Yes.
everybody would understand. And they'd still
Hmm.
maybe 20 years later say, are you over it yet? Right?
Right.
But your child's not dead, thank God, I guess, but your child lives 3 miles down the road and you can't see them.
Right.
Or your
Exactly.
child has to spend 70% of the time with someone who's sexually preying upon them.
Hmm.
Like, there's just, how do you
Right.
even explain that to someone? How
Right.
do you even have that kind of a mom? I have so many moms. Again, about a third of my caseload is the mothers who are sending their children to perpetrators,
Right.
knowing they're being actively sexually abused.
Oh,
And actually having UTIs, et cetera, in the family court
right.
is not holding offenders accountable.
Yeah.
So I actually have a sexual abuse a group for moms who have children who are being sexually abused because it's just I mean that's a heartbreak. You can't even I
No. No, yeah, there's no words for it. Absolutely. Okay, well, I'm glad you have those support groups for them because we do need to be with each other, support each other, hear other people going through this so that we don't feel alone. It's the whole
Hmm.
reason I started talking was because I thought I was the only one. I'm like, how was I so stupid to not see any of this? But now I
Hmm.
realize, and I didn't know. I didn't know. And it's not just, well, he was just lying. No, it was like, and that's why when I try to explain like his new wife, who was a coworker, who was our friend, it's like, you don't understand. He's been grooming her. And why do I know this? Because he groomed me. Like I can see it clear as day, the actions he took and how he did it to her, because he did it in front of me and I did nothing. But that's okay. That's the spell I was under, the abuse. So,
They groom us, right?
yeah.
Even the smartest, even the most astute of us. Hey, listen, I was 19 when I started doing this work.
Yeah.
I'm a therapist and I teach on it every semester. I worked for child welfare. I have uh, quite a lot of experience in the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
mhm.
know. I know. And it still happens. I've talked to a lot of women who are like, "Yes, I'm a therapist. I do this work and I still got into an abusive relationship." You just don't realize they are so manipulative. It's all coercive control. Someone said. You guys got to go listen to her TED Talk because it was amazing. I'll put everything in the show notes.
Thank
So we're
you.
getting close to the end. So I just wanted to ask you, if there's anything that, however you'd like to end it, if there's anything that you'd like to share before we say goodbye today.
Sure, I would like to say I always try to give protective parents hope, regardless of your circumstances, whether your kids are going and you don't want them to go, or they're not going and now you're in trouble with family court, or whatever this parenting situation is for you. I want you to realize that you are your child's greatest healer, that you actually have a skill set that no one else on the planet has. And we can talk about children going to therapy all day long, but the reality is you are their best therapist, you are their best healer. And those are the tools I try to share with people online, anywhere and everywhere, because I think we forget how powerful the love we have for our children is. And we're so
Yeah.
harmed by the abusive person, we don't realize that's our superpower.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really is. And it's why they're trying to stop us in so many ways. We do have I had to look at, my friends started saying to me, they're like, your kids are you. And I was like, wait, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, they're just like you. They're so sweet and they love everybody and they're just so
Mm.
kind. And I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God. Because even with everything I went through, they ended up great. And healing, of course, they're doing the work to heal as well, because I didn't really understand that, but now talking to you has been so enlightening about, and it's so funny because I was just having a conversation last night with a friend saying like, well, the kids weren't abused. I was.
No,
And
the kids were.
right. And so when she was talking to me, she told me a little story and I go, oh, the kids were abused. And she's like, yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that he was abusing them too in a different way, not the way he was abusing you. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
And even the dysregulation in the home,
Yes.
what that does to the nervous system of a child, never mind you,
Yeah.
is abusive.
Right.
You wouldn't put a child actively into, in a minefield,
Right.
but that's what ends up happening for these kids is they're living in a minefield.
Yeah.
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 So thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything. Where can everybody find you? And we'll put everything in the show notes.
awesome. Thank you. They can find me at Course of Control Consulting or iknowyourheart.com, because protective parents know their children's hearts better than anyone else. And I hope they will follow me on Perfect Prey and also check out my TEDx. And I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll put everything in the show notes. So, guys, please go ahead and connect with Dr. C. And if anything resonated with you today, please leave us a review and all the things so that we can continue doing this work. And of course, we'll put your podcast in the show notes as well. Dr. C, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Laura. Have a wonderful day.